By a whisker. Some last gasp goalpost drama sees Sydney survive against Adelaide. Means the Crows season is done, and it also means that reigning Premier Geelong now can't play finals. We'll unpack it all right here on The Round So Far, brought to you by AAMI. This is The Round So Far, brought to you by AAMI. I'm Riley Beveridge. This is Kane Cornes. Kane, it has been a dramatic day of football. There's only one place we can start. It's the biggest story potentially of the year. Did it hit the post?
It didn't hit the post. You would not believe this. With 1 minute and 18 seconds, Ben Keays goes back, kicks the goal of his life, celebrates with the crowd, salutes to the crowd, but little does he know the goal umpire has said that ball has hit the post. He did not review that, which is the big error that he has made. We're going to get a close look at this, and from every angle that I can see, Riley, there is daylight between the ball and the post. That was an error. It was an error on the call, and it was an even bigger error not to go upstairs to the arc and have that checked. Seasons, coaches, players' jobs are on the line, and in that moment, that just had to go upstairs and they had to check it.
I'm with you in the sense that I think there was daylight the entire time. Now, there's been some commentary around, well, did it hit the padding? But that last replay we saw shows that the ball clearly passes the post above the padding. So it can't have hit the padding. They couldn't have checked edge. That's the really crucial part of this, because had they have checked edge, Cal Mills actually slaps the post as he's trying to touch the ball. So it would have interfered with edge, so you couldn't check that either way. I still think they probably should have checked it at the arc just to see if there was daylight.
They had to check it. The goal umpire was in reasonable position, but he's got three players right next to him trying to touch the ball. You can see the Crows players' reaction. The players are the best judges of this. There was three Crows players in the goal square, all with their arms up. Keays was bemused after the game. He couldn't believe it. You had to check at least. Now, whether the arc would have overturned that because the umpire's call, soft call, would have been a goal, I don't know, but the whole thing needs a review, not just this game. So technology-wise, as we spoke about last week with the Melbourne-Carlton game, that needs to be reviewed. There needs to be better technology, the process behind it. And in that moment, that goal umpire has made a significant error. The field umpires should have reminded him to go upstairs. They would have had a good view of it. And then we're not talking about a controversial moment that has shaped the eight in the worst possible way, and the Crows are done.
The Crows are done, so are Geelong. We'll get to them in a little bit. This was a remarkable game, as it was even before the post incident, because Sydney led by 44 points before Adelaide came home like a steam train.
Yeah, double disposals in the last quarter, the Crows. They were coming hard. 44 points the Swans got up, and you think this is all over. But once again, these are some of the goals that they kicked, but it was their inaccuracy that's cost them. And that has been the story for Adelaide all year. There's Taylor Walker takes a strong contested mark. He kicked two, but was well held from McCartan, and it was like a tidal wave. Sydney just went far too safe and tried to save the game. This goal here from Rochelle is excellent. I thought he gave them a real spark. I thought Dawson lifted. Laird has always been big and had big numbers again. Sydney couldn't stop it. The game needed to go for a couple of more minutes and Adelaide get the win, but in the end, Sydney's recent form has been as good as any team in the comp.
As you mentioned, Adelaide will be kicking themselves, not just for this week, but for last week as well. They kicked 2-5 in the last quarter against Brisbane last week. They lost it by a goal. 4-8 in the final term tonight. They had a run of 6 straight behinds at one point.
Yes, just from the top of your head, there's 3 or 4 games this year where inaccuracy has cost them, starting at round 1 against the Giants when they were really inaccurate. But this has just been a real issue for them. Now, some of these chances are hard. That's not an easy shot, but 4-8 in the last quarter after 2-5. This is one that you would think you're at least going to score from that. Now, whether it's fatigue, whether their set shot routines are not right, but that's a skillful player missing a pretty easy shot for a player as skillful as him. So, in the end, that's the difference in the game. You look at all the stats really even into the last quarter where Adelaide exploded, but couldn't finish and couldn't do the damage on the scoreboard.
No, they couldn't. Sydney, on the other hand, wins its 6th straight game. They're looking like playing finals. This is a crucial win for them because they play Melbourne, of course, next week. And they're starting to get their best team back. So have a look. This is the 2022 grand final teams. Obviously, Paddy McCartan and Lance Franklin have retired. Sam Reid won't play for the rest of the year. Justin McInerney probably comes back next week. they could have 20 of the 23 available from the grand final for next week's game.
It's a pretty good list, isn't it? Now, I don't think anyone's winning it from outside the top 4, but they're not going to fear anyone coming to the finals in this form. They've won everywhere. They've won against good sides. They've won away from home, and they're finding form at the right time. And we know how important that is. Some other teams are faltering as we lead up to the final. So the week off will come at a good time for them, and perhaps they'll be boosted with their personnel even more so. But they're in good form. I think there's an issue in the rucks. They still can't trust Tom Hickey, but they do look better with him in the ruck, McLean forward, and their midfield and their small forwards are really dangerous, as we know.
The other big story of the night came at Marvel Stadium. The reigning premier Geelong now can't play finals as a result of that game. They were just smashed out of the middle tonight against St Kilda.
How many times have we spoken about this with Geelong? This is a major issue for them on ball. So the Saints plus 25 points from stoppage. They kicked 4 centre bounce goals to 0. Clearances, they had their way. Now, clearly Geelong didn't have a ruckman, but Stanley's been uncompetitive when he's played this year anyway, so they need to find one of those in the off-season, and they need to find a couple of midfielders, because he was forced to get the first choice midfielders out tonight. He put Stengel in there. He put Parfitt in there. At one stage, he put Jeremy Cameron in there. What about that mark from Mason Wood drifting down from the wing, and this from Sharman as well? Like, look at this for a mark out of the centre bounce. That was one of their 4 centre bounce goals that they kicked. So their on-ball division has been smashed. And then when they got them on the outside, the Saints, they made them look incredibly slow today, Geelong, not for the first time this year.
So a couple of big players have gone out of that midfield this year. Cam Guthrie's been injured for a lot of the year. Joel Selwood obviously retired from that grand final side. Patrick Dangerfield tonight as well. It just wasn't his night throughout the entire game.
I can't remember playing a game this poor. He was so good last week, but the amount of times he fumbled the footy, he missed easy handballs. He looked heavy, he looked sluggish, he couldn't get out and burst away from clearance. Like, that rarely happens where he actually gets pinged at a stoppage. That's where he explodes. The bounce of the ball didn't go his way. So he was ineffective. They had to get him out of the centre bounce and out of the midfield because he was beaten. So it just felt like that was reflective of the way that you saw Geelong. Now I've written them off for many years and been made look foolish for doing that. But it felt like an end of an era tonight. It genuinely felt like this is it, and there's going to have to be some significant changes made at the end of the year, because when their older good players don't play well, there isn't a lot to go to. I think their backline is suspect. Their ruck division has been suspect for a while, and they're lacking about 3 or 4 genuine on-ballers, and Tom Hawkins was their most dangerous forward again. The guy's 34 years of age, so they got some serious questions. They got the best list management department in the league, so I'm sure they can answer them, but right now feels like the end of an era.
It was only the second time in the last 17 years that Geelong didn't play finals. 4 weeks ago, though, you said they could win the premiership. Like, it's remarkable how quickly it's turned from when it looked like it was coming up for them.
Yeah, but that's because I've been burnt by myself so many times for writing them off, so I wasn't willing to do that. And with the amount of games that they had at home, I thought it would click into gear and they'd get it. I don't want to dismiss the Saints tonight, because I've been hard on the Saints, and I just thought it was an outstanding 4-quarter performance in every facet of the game. So we mentioned the on-ball stuff and the centre bounce work, but their ability to turn the footy over, the game plan to go fast. They got the extra number back and protected in front of Hawkins and Cameron. Cameron went kick chasing because Wilkie did such a good job on him, and they were just harder. They were more intense. Their pressure rating was through the roof. The game plan was excellent. So congratulations to Ross Lyon, who I've doubted that they would get to this point this year, for getting the Saints to qualify for the finals.
Well, that's the other side of the coin, because I reckon 4 weeks ago as well, even Ross himself was saying he didn't know how they would turn it around. All right, let's head to our moment of the weekend now. Pretty remarkable this. This Geelong-St Kilda game welcomed the 7 millionth fan through the doors at a game of AFL football this year. Pretty incredible. Those fans there, they won an AFL Finals Series passport and complimentary memberships for the next 10 years, which is pretty remarkable. Carlton, they booked their spot in the finals. They will be playing in September for the first time in a decade. They beat Gold Coast up at Heritage Bank Stadium. It was a pretty remarkable outing for them, and it was a remarkable outing for Charlie Curnow. Now, this is the last quarter. They kick this goal, it goes back to 5 points, but then straight after this, Charlie Curnow goes back into the back line, plays as a loose man, And won them the game. Yeah, so 5 goals as a forward.
Looking at last year, the close games that they lost, and even last week against Melbourne, I don't think they did everything right. So this was the change they made this time. They're going to make sure they're not going to cough this game up. So Curnow, the hottest player on the ground, the hottest player in the league, goes back behind the ball. Now, that's the Anderson point. Not sure his positioning is right there. But this one here, you can highlight him from behind the goals. He would usually be that long kick target and come up to provide a contest. He doesn't even look for the footy. He's gone, nah, that's not my role here. I'm going to go back as the extra in case we do lose it. And we are likely to lose it because our numbers aren't there. They're behind the ball. And he takes this game-saving mark late. So I just thought it was good tactics and it was excellent execution from a player who I'm not sure he's ever done that.
No.
So we'll look to that in finals if they get themselves involved in a close one. But tactically, much better than last week, I thought.
He was awesome as a forward as well. He completely changed this game with his work in the forward line. He's our Saturday star today. He kicks 5 goals. He kicked 4 in the second quarter alone.
I wanted to highlight this. So this is when they're flat. They'd had 5, the first 5 kicked against them. And you can see there, they're 40 points down. And he says, get up. Give me something. Give me some energy. And he was the player that provided the energy in the second quarter. He's the best kick of the football from just outside 50s. From about 50 to 70, you want him with the footy in his hands. But his numbers in this second quarter alone, just extraordinary. He kicked 4 in the second quarter. The goal assist that we saw to Owies, and have a look at this for a finish. I know you like this one.
Yeah, it was certainly because he didn't even look at the goal. So he just wheels around, doesn't even look where the goal is. As you mentioned before, though, it's his field kicking, which his forwards know exactly what he's doing. So as soon as he takes this mark, Harry Mackay knows what he's doing, gets on his bike and runs straight towards goal.
Yeah, so the Blues fans and his teammates can thank him for single-handedly getting them over the line today. He was the one that was actually bringing the energy and dragging his teammates along with him. So not noted, I don't think, for his leadership, but I thought that was one of the better leadership games. Not captain, doesn't have a title, that I've seen this year, and everyone jumped on his back like the old Stephen Kernahan would have done. It was an inspirational performance, and right now, you know, he's in the conversation for the hottest 1, 2 or 3 players in the league.
One of the most remarkable results of the season happened at Giants Stadium, where GWS beat Essendon by 126 points, Kane.
Yeah, so there's Redmond dropping an easy mark. He's pretty happy because he got his long-term contract extension and played like it, played like he was satisfied, as did most of his teammates. I mean, some of the numbers which we'll go through in this game are alarming, but this is the vision. This is what they will have to sit through, and I hope they suffer through this vision because they had a gold-clad opportunity with the ease in which the draw opened up for Essendon this year, playing North twice, playing West Coast twice. There's 4 guaranteed wins, and they delivered this at the later stages of the season after starting it so promisingly and having so much optimism around the club. So we're highlighting Himmelberg here. He is just a reflection of what went on today. That's Draper alongside of him, and this is... Like, this is what you do in the park. Can I just have a handball around the back and slot one from outside 50? Yep, no worries, Harry. Just go about your business like that. And that was a great example of the lack of effort that the Bombers players showed today.
Pretty crazy. It was their 5th worst defeat of all time, Essendon. And you look at the dates here, going back to the 80s, the 90s, the 70s, even the 30s is when it was last this bad for the Bombers. So a really dirty game for them.
I just think what I want to say about the Bombers is they're so nice. Like, they are just a nice team. You look at the players who play in the front half of the ground, Peter Wright, Langford, they're just nice players. Who's someone that's going to actually put their body on the line and make a statement? I look at their midfield, just nice, really happy to get their 30, but not happy to get their knees dirty. And then you look at their defence, and we'll get to Jesse Hogan in a minute, they're too nice. So I think Essendon need to go and get some mongrel into that team because right now they're playing like that and they're paying for it.
You mentioned Jesse Hogan there. It was a day out, a career best day for him. He kicked 9 goals to go with 24 disposals and 17 marks.
He's had a career day. His previous best was 7. Now he had the Zirk-Thatcher matchup. Zirk, you'd want to put a bit more body contact on that, and I wonder whether he's thinking about his future. He's been linked to Port Adelaide. You'd hope Port Adelaide were watching him in his performance today. There was times where Jesse Hogan was leading up, marking the ball on the logo, and then sprinting back and marking the ball inside forward 50. His work rate was enormous. 24 disposals, 17 marks, 16 score involvements and 9 goals. It's one of the best individual performances that we've seen this year. It hasn't all been easy for him throughout his career, clearly. what a reward it was today, and he'll remember that one for a long time.
A sensational day for him. The Bombers can still, remarkably, mathematically, play final. So they're 10th there. They'll need a lot to go their way. They'll need to make up 13% on the Giants. It's shaping up as a really interesting top 8 race.
No, there's no doubt about that. So the Saints are there. It's going to be pretty difficult for Sydney to miss, and the Western Bulldogs that's opened up for them a bit now with West Coast and Geelong, who
they have to beat Geelong.
I think Geelong will have put the cue in the rack by then with what we saw tonight. That was bad, and you'd think it's unlikely that Essendon get there.
The other thing that could happen here is the Western Bulldogs could beat West Coast by so much on Sunday, where they don't even necessarily need to beat Geelong. Even just a small loss could see them still beat, provided the Giants lose to the Blues next week, could still mean they get over.
Would have been a bit different if that goal umpire went upstairs tonight at the Adelaide Oval.
Yeah, Adelaide and Geelong might still have been in the finals race. Let's get to our AAMI Clangers now. Who covers Clangers? AAMI does. Just the one this week, because it might be the Clanger of the year from Devon Robertson. This was just about one of the funniest things I've seen on the footy field for so long. So you see there, Braden Maynard rips his jumper. He gets away with playing like this for the next 2-3 minutes. He even gets a goal assist with his jumper just absolutely barely clinging to him. But then when he gets tackled again at the next set of bounds and throws it off, I was cackling at home.
Nah, he was angry. He was upset. The Collingwood players swarming over him. And look at this. He just chucks it. He just chucks the jumper. And then it was amazing. The umpire actually allowed him to stay out there for a minute or so with no top on. I'm like, hang on, you got to stop the game. You can't have a player running out there with no top on. There's the trainer trying to get the GPS out and back into the new one. He's upset, but he's gone Insta-famous. His Instagram followers have doubled, and that's going to be hard to beat for Clanger of the Year.
It was one of the best. Brisbane produced one of their best performances of the season as well at Marvel Stadium. They absolutely killed the Pies on turnover. Just about every time Collingwood turned the footy over, they went back the other way and scored.
Plus 50 points in turnover differential. And didn't they weaponise the ball? Like, how deadly were they by foot? So they've got a few things that are shaping to say that they're a real premiership threat. Now, one of those is that they're not going to have to leave home. So I think from now, with this win, they just turn up on grand final day. No one's beating them at the Gabba in their 2 finals, I wouldn't have thought. I'd much rather play Collingwood in the first final than go to the Gabba and play Brisbane. So that affects Melbourne and Port Adelaide. I know you can't sort of manufacture where you finish and sort of tank to do that, but I'd rather get Collingwood at the MCG than Brisbane at the Gabba with the way that they're playing. Last week we lauded their small forwards and said that they can carry them to a premiership. They played pretty well again. Cameron kicked 4. Link McCarthy's in good form. Cam Rayner was back to his best stuff, and just the way that they were able to slice through Collingwood's defence would have Craig McRae worried a bit.
What is going on with Collingwood's backline? Because over the last 4 weeks, they've conceded 100 points 3 times. Have a look at this. Between rounds 1 to 19, they were the best side for conceding points against in the comp. Over the last 4 weeks, they're dead last. It's the first time since 2008, the first time in 15 years that they've conceded 100 plus in 3 straight games.
So it says to you that profile, you're not going to win it. But we know that there's no Dacos, no Moore, no De Goey, no Bobby Hill. So that's the out that we're giving them. But I've always thought this year they've been gettable. Their defenders have been gettable. They hung their hat on that. They were, pretty clear at spruiking it to everyone. So that's a real issue. 18th for them. No one's winning the premiership with that. But you think with the personnel they're going to get back, they'll be able to rectify it. But I'm starting to lose just a little bit of confidence in them. And they've lost the aura, that unbeatable aura. Teams now know that they can get them.
Can I ask you something just about the way Brisbane prepares for the finals mentally? We know how much has been spoken about their finals record and their record at the MCG over a long period of time. They've now won 6 straight games against Collingwood. 2 of them have been in Victoria. Does that give them a different sort of mental edge going into September?
I just don't think worry about it. Or just worry about it in grand final week. Because that's all they've got to focus on is getting that first final at the Gabba, whether it's Melbourne, whether it's Port Adelaide. They'll fancy themselves to win that. Another week off, prelim final at home. That place is going to be rocking. It'll be back to the early 2000s. And then we'll worry about our record in grand final week. So don't look too far ahead. Their game's in really good order. Their personnel is all fit and firing, and they're probably my favourite right now. I think they've just surpassed Collingwood after that performance.
Well, let's have a look at the top 4 race, as you mentioned, Kane, because the race for the top 2's heating up. Port Adelaide can keep the pressure on tomorrow against Fremantle. Carlton's still not out of it. They'll need a favour from Hawthorn tomorrow and then maybe Sydney next week. But I tell you what, it's going to be really interesting to see who ties up that top 2 spot.
Yeah, well, Brisbane can even go to 1, but
Yeah.
after what we saw from Essendon today and that pathetic performance, you think that's very unlikely. So, yeah, the jockeying for spots has made this season fascinating from start to finish.
Let's head to the MCG now, where it was a farewell for a lot of our favourite players in the comp. Jack Ziebell, of course, retiring at North Melbourne, playing his final game. And then Jack Riewoldt and Trent Cotchin also hanging up the boots after
Took
this
a
one.
hanger, didn't he? Jack Ziebell, and turned the clock back before turning that over. Jack Riewoldt kicks the goal there from the goal square. Terrific scenes. I think all of the 17 other players ran to him after that. So a nice moment. And then here's Trent Cotchin just waxing it up late in the game. But what a legacy all 3 players leave at their clubs, but in particular Cotchin and Riewoldt for the success that they've had. And they would never have imagined when they were drafted to that club that it would have turned out as well as it did. And terrific scenes as they've played so much footy together and walk off the field with their families.
I don't think they would have imagined it would have turned out so well for them when they were finishing the 2016 season as well, given what they did over the next 4 years. It was pretty crazy. You've been critical of Tigers a lot this year, Kane, in terms of what's next for them. So this is the last 3 drafts. This is only national draft picks. This is what they banked on, these 5 picks here. So they got 5 picks inside the top 30 in 2021. That's what they're hedging their bets on in terms of their future. That's what gave them the confidence to trade out picks for Hopper and Taranto. Do you think they can still be still challenge in the next couple of years?
I don't. I've got some real concerns over that group there. Gibcus I like, and Sonzi's shown a bit. Other than that, I'm not too sure. And with the lack of picks that they've got upcoming and that pick that they gave to the Giants, I bet they wish they could have that one back. So, look, there's some spots available. The new coach will come in. He'll breathe some life. He'll give them some energy. There's no doubt about that. But I think it's going to be a pretty difficult half-decade for the Tigers.
Just before we move on, Nick Larkey, 6 goals today. He was absolutely sensational, Kane. There's a stat here I want to read out. I had to double-check this because I didn't quite believe it. It's his 93rd career game, and this was the 10th time he's kicked 5 goals or more. Now, given that he's barely won 10 games in those 93 games, for him to kick 5 or more 10 times, he's a remarkable player.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think everyone's starting to recognise that if they hadn't already. Like, to do this in a team that has won 2 games for the year and continually front up and to maintain his motivation, knowing that it's him or bust. Like, who else is there? Well, when Zerha doesn't play, who's in that forward line that anyone would be worried about? So the opposition know it's going to him, and he still had that success knowing that they have prepared for that. So, yeah, I think we need to probably recognise what he's done. I guess we recognise midfielders a lot in this game, and coaches' votes and Brownlows will do that, and best and fairest. But, like, he should be winning North Melbourne's best and fairest by an absolute mile.
Let's have a look at the Sunday fixtures in round 23. We start at Marvel Stadium with Western Bulldogs taking on West Coast. They should win that one comfortably on their way to September. Melbourne plays Hawthorn. And then Fremantle against Port Adelaide is going to be an interesting one to finish. I want to get to Kane's question now, and this week it is, how many teams can win the flag?
I don't think anyone can win it from the top, outside the top 4.
Right.
So 4.
4.
And
you
teams.
think all 4 of them can?
I think all 4 of the top 4 can win it. I would favour Collingwood, Brisbane and Melbourne, and then I'd have Port Adelaide on the 4th rung of the ladder. Carlton and Sydney are in great form, but I just think it's too big of an ask to do it. I know it's happened before, but it's not happening this year.
It'll certainly be tough. Great episode, Kane.
Good on you,
Thanks for your help. See you next week. The last week of the year.